You guys have heard me say this before about the, we're seeing our commissions get lower and lower. And I truly believe the reason why it is because more and more people are getting into the business because it's easy to get into this business. It's not a lot of money. Couple of weeks, maybe 2 months worth of, school, take a test and you're in. And what happens is in the absence of value, that's what people start discounting. And I think that's what really lowers the standard of our business. So when I read these books or you hear stories about overcoming obstacles and major obstacles, guys, we just have to be tough. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we earn our money, and that's what makes us professionals. Not just because we have a license and the state says we have a license and quote we're professionals at what we do. What really makes us professionals when we're willing to do what the other guy is not willing to do. And if you don't believe me, ask all the veterans in our company. And I'm just looking at names. You got Matheson, you got Leanne Hervey, Bonnie Burkus here, Veronica, Logan. Look at all the veterans in this room. Those that have been in this business for a long time. All of us on an everyday basis overcome obstacles. And when the going gets tough, as they say, the tough get going, right? It's just that simple. This is not a rocket science business. But to get going and to be better than your competition, you have to be smarter than him. And the way you be smarter than him is by coming to meetings like this, or you're reading books and you're going to classes. All right. Everybody takes their 24 hours because we have to take 24 hours. Is there anybody in this room?
Oops. Sandy, I'm sorry about that. Sandy, you're on mute.
Because if you're not taking more than 24 hours, I think you're missing out. I think a lot of us just go to classes just to take a class and get the license over with. And this is not about me, but last year I had over 80 class hours. For me, as the broker, I feel I have to be one step ahead, right? Back when I was an agent, somebody else had to do that. It was their job to understand what's coming down the pipeline and what's changing. And then they had to teach it to me. But my job is I have to teach it to you and understand it. So I got to be one step ahead. And you guys have to be one step ahead of our competition. And going to classes, taking one of the veterans to have a drink. Take me for a cocktail. I'll talk to you for all day long. Give me a margarita or a scotch. I'll tell you other things. Talk to Julie. Talk to anybody. Anybody in this company is willing to talk to anybody. But you got to reach out. The beauty of this business is this is your business. You're your own businessman, your own businesswoman. This is your business. But the tools are there and the resources are there and the people are there to help you and guide you along. I don't think anybody in this room can ever say that I went to somebody in this company for help and they were denied help. So that's my little monologue for this morning. The tools are there, the programs are there, the resources are there, the people are there. You guys all got your licenses, so you know what you're doing. Everybody here is selling real estate. If you guys have sold one more house, they say, I'll give you an example. They say if you took out a 30-year mortgage, and every month or every year you made one extra payment a year, your 30-year mortgage would be paid off in about 12 years or 13, maybe 16 years. And you would be saving literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. It sounds so simple, right? One extra payment a year, 13 payments a year. So imagine whatever we do if you did a little bit more. If you're door knocking, maybe you knocked on one more door every day, or you made one more phone call every day, or you sent out one more letter every day, or you did one more open house every weekend, or whatever it is that you do in your business plan. Just do what you're doing, just do a little bit more. And there's a great book from Darren Hardy called The Compound Effect. And it just talks about little steps. After a while, it's a big step, right? And the two examples he uses in his book, one is near and dear to my heart. You just don't get up and run 26 miles and run a marathon. But if you want to train for it, you run 1 mile a day. And then the next day you run 1.5 miles. And the next day you run 2 miles. The next thing you know, you're doing it. But here's the best one. He said, if you took an airplane and you put an airplane on automatic pilot and you're sending it from LA to New York, right? Roughly 3,000 miles, and you set the course. And if you're 1 degree off on this course, just one small degree off, that plane would never make it to New York. It would go to Maine. 1 degree, and you're 500 miles off course, right? 1 degree sounds nothing. Watch this, Frankie, and we didn't rehearse this. Ryan placed 4th in the Olympics in one of his events, right? How far was he from 3rd place, from a bronze medal?
Probably 30 seconds.
30 seconds. And watch this. How long was the race, distance-wise?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. So that's maybe 3 seconds every 3 seconds a minute, whatever the math is. Think about that. 3 seconds faster every minute. Sounds like nothing. And he could have got himself a bronze medal, right?
He looks back and he knows what he needs to do. That one little bit more. He knows now what he needs to do next time.
Right. It wasn't 30 seconds. It was 3 seconds per minute when you really just break it down. That's what it boils down to. So anyway, that's my monologue today. Greg, first of all, I always like to open up the room. So tell me what's going on in your world, guys. I see the market is stabilizing in my opinion. The last time we spoke about this, we talked about how the market was kind of shifting a little bit. I think it's made a little bit of a downshift where it's still a pretty good seller's market, but I think it's holding tight. I don't think it's shifting further down. I don't think it's increasing back to where it was, but I think the market in the last month or so is holding a new norm, new pricing, new certainly a little bit more supply, a little bit less, a little bit more demand. I'm sorry, certainly more supply, but the demand is staying the same. Interest rates are staying the same. I still see multiple offers, but not the way we've talked about in the last 6 or 9 months. So I definitely think that we're establishing a new level of a new norm. The business is out there, business is good. Still a lot of new listings coming our way. Right? I'm seeing deals with contingencies. I saw a couple this past week, buyer contingencies where buyers are getting the deals done, sellers are accepting them. I'm not seeing a lot of appraisal waivers anymore. I'm not seeing buyers giving up their soul to buy a house. So, things are, I wouldn't say stable, normalized, but they're stabilizing. I believe that's where we are right now. What are you guys seeing? Tell me what's going on out there. What are you guys seeing?
I would agree with everything you just said.
Julie, what's going on with you with escrows?
Yeah, we're seeing it hold steady over the last few weeks. It's definitely not the frenzy of earlier in the summer. We're still seeing, good contracts. I would say fewer cancellations because when it was such a frenzy, people were just anxious to get something into escrow and then they'd stop and think about it. So fewer cancellations. The seems that the inventory has stabilized a bit. It's definitely not going up. It's about the same for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Correct. And my go-to every week I talk about single family homes,
County.
actively for sale in Maricopa County. And right now it's holding steady about 4,200 homes, right? It's up about 2,000 from where it was 7-9 months ago. So it's doubled, but it's holding steady for the last month now, about 4,000, 4,300. So it's holding steady. So I think, again, those are just my go-to numbers. I did a deal just now where this was an interesting one, that there was a tenant in the place. And you guys, if you ever called me about a house that you're selling where there's a tenant in the place, you always get the stock answer is that if the tenant doesn't want to cooperate, the landlord will lose. It's just the way it is, just cutting through the chase, the landlord will lose. And this tenant wasn't cooperating. And, we made them offers, we gave them some incentives, and it was really difficult. And of course, they're talking about how, every time a buyer would come through, I wouldn't buy this place because the place was bad. It was, the construction was poor, blah, 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 blah. So, like I said, I deal with the same issues, and telling a seller sometimes that, even though they have rights, going through the process is not an easy process. So all of these things are happening. It's all out there. What else is going on out there, guys? I'm trying to think who I spoke to this week. Kim, you called me this week for something. What was it about?
I called you about a lot. I wasn't sure how to do a purchase contract for a lot.
For a lot.
And I didn't know if I needed a survey, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do, basically.
Right, right. But we got through it and you got it done, right?
Well, yeah, I got it done. I think I told you, but then the seller had a stroke and is hospitalized and incapacitated. So everything's kind of on hold for right now. There's no POA or trust or anything. So I don't know what'll happen.
Right.
But I learned how to write a purchase contract for a lot. So that's a good
right.
thing.
And you know what? The contract doesn't change for the next time you do it.
Right, right. I
Right.
guess my only question, and I talked to Julie about it a little bit too, is that it wasn't in, I mean, it was in Fountain Hills. So it wasn't necessarily in a subdivision, but it was like the utilities and everything were supposedly like right there. I just was, do we need a survey? Am I supposed to be checking like the soil? I just wasn't sure what else is involved
Right.
in that lot.
Yeah, and there's people out here that sell lots, and the big thing about a lot is it just depends. You know, if it's a lot in an established subdivision, then it's, you know, where you have houses in the neighborhood, and it's, you know, a lot is pretty distinct and clearly defined. You know, typically you don't need surveys, and I'm not saying you shouldn't get one, as opposed to if you're buying, you know, a 5-acre parcel or an acre lot out in Rio Verde, where it's just open space and the lot is not clearly defined, or you're buying in, you know, Carefree or whatever the case may be. And then you probably need a survey of minimal getting the 4 points, you know, on a property.
Right, right.
That's-
Yeah.
That's what it
And
comes to.
Julie had checked on it with title and they said for this one, we didn't need one. So
Right.
that kind of rings true, it sounds like.
Right. Okay, good.
Thank
Or
you.
Tonopah, you know, walking out there with your boots on and getting out there and setting it yourself, right, Veronica?
All right, everybody keep your fingers crossed. Andrew Witt, unmute yourself and just tell me the number and I'll explain everybody what this is. Just tell me the number.
Can you hear me? I don't think I have my mic plugged in today.
Yep, we
We
got you.
hear
Ron.
you. We hear you.
I am at 6,800. We're on page 600.
We're
Huh?
halfway home.
Yeah.
So if I didn't brag about Andrew last week, I'll tell you this week. So something that we have to do for the state as part of the broker, we, you know, all of our files are kept in SkySlope. All of our files are kept in SkySlope. So we have to keep files for how many years, guys? How many years do we have to keep files for? Somebody?
Brian, that's an ugly face.
3.
You should know that.
5
20.
years.
5 years. Who said 5 years? 5. We have to keep.
That was me, Nora.
Nora, well done. We have to keep our records for 5 years as a broker. You guys obviously have to keep your records. You can keep them longer, but as a brokerage, we have to keep records for 5 years. So all of our records are kept on SkySlope, which we've been using for well over 5 years. We even have access to SureClone, our old system. But what I didn't know was the state requires every brokerage to have their own backup storage where we don't have to rely on a third party. Meaning if we have to go back 5 years for a file, right now we rely on SkySlope to get that file. But I didn't know that we have to have our own in-house storage. So we looked into doing that, and Andrew was able to, he went to SkySlope, and SkySlope wanted to charge us an enormous amount of money to go back the last 5 years. We figured there's about 12,000 files, give or take. Andrew created a program where it automatically kind of downloads itself. And for lack of all the details, we're up to 6,800 files. He started this project about 2 weeks ago, and hopefully in another 2 weeks we're gonna have everything backed up, and then we're gonna be on a regular monthly program to back up all our files. So I brag about that because he knew what needed to be done, and he went above and beyond the call and get it done. Because Andrew had to do is say, well, it's going to cost us $10,000, and that's the only way we can back it up. And he went on his own and figured out another way to do that. So well done, Andrew, and congratulations again. So that's a big deal. Okay, Greg has a, kind of a program for us today, so.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting Sandy to be here, so you'll see the one tile that says the spirit of Sandy Karpen, not the real Sandy Karpen. I had to log on to his computer because he's the host of this, and I had to make myself a host, so I had to leave him up, and so I didn't want anybody getting confused thinking that Sandy Karpen was really here. So the guy that had been talking, that's the other spirit of Sandy. So he's his guest speaker most likely is going to be a grandchild, probably Caleb. Am I guessing correct?
Maybe.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
hopefully he'll bring his little cards. But I put together a little trivia. You guys know when I host this, I like to do trivia, trying to make it a little bit more fun. And instead of just pounding contract information down your throat, I like to make it a little bit fun. So I did that again today. Let's see. All right, you guys see it? The contract law, do you guys see that slide?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
We see it.
Perfect. All right, so we are going to
Keep
start
tally of
our.
your score. There'll be cash prizes. Cash prizes.
All right, so what I want everybody to do is unmute themselves, and then when you have the answer, you yell out your name. Okay? I'm going to keep Don muted because he doesn't get to play. All right. The agent, this is talking about a water softener. The agent is representing the buyer in a residential purchase contract under the standard AAR purchase contract. The home has a water softener that was not addressed in the contract. The seller of the house does not own the water softener. It is making payments on it. Question is, can the seller remove the water softener?
No.
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 All right, everybody says no. Anybody say yes?
I say yes.
Eddie, what do you think? All right,
Because
the answer is yes, they can. Pursuant to the February 2016 contract at lines 40 to 43, a water softener system is only conveys at closing if it's owned by the seller. Since it's not owned and he's making payments, he cannot make it convey. So those that said yes, nicely done. So
But wait, let's talk about that for a minute, okay?
you bet.
So there's two things. So our new contracts are February 2020, but that part didn't change, right? That a
Correct.
seller can only give what he's got. So I'll give you two examples. We get this phone call a lot. The
Mhm.
seller, didn't turn over keys, or the seller didn't turn over garage door openers, or the seller didn't turn over mailbox keys. The seller can only turn over to the buyer what he's got. If he doesn't have those things, like a bank-owned property or they don't have them, they can't give you what you don't got. So if you want those things that are not addressed, you have to put in a purchase contract. So I see purchase contracts where it says buyer to receive or seller to give to buyer at closing, 2 mailbox keys, 2 garage door openers. Now it becomes a contract. In this issue, what I see a lot also is pool vacuum cleaners, where the owner did not own the vacuum, the pool service did. And the pool service used it as a supplement because the pop-ups weren't doing the job itself. So the pool service didn't want to sweep the pool every week. So he put his own vacuum cleaner into the pool, the Jandy type things in the pool. The seller can only convey. Now, having said that, it was the seller's responsibility to disclose that this was owned and this was leased and not owned. Back in the day, this was a big problem with alarm systems. Most alarm systems today are already owned. Or how about a solar system? If it's leased, you have to disclose that. So the problem comes at closing. If the seller didn't disclose it, the buyer has every right to think they're getting it, but they're not. And so we have to ask those questions as agents. The seller has an obligation to disclose that. Okay.
All right. Nicely done, Sandy. You get a gold star today. So far. All other terms and conditions remain the same. This one's one of the ones that Sandy absolutely loves, and so that's the reason I put this one in here today. A buyer presents an offer to the seller on the residential resale purchase contract. The seller wishes to counter the purchase price and the inspection period. Listing agent counters the purchase price on counter offer number 1 stating the purchase price shall be $200,000. All other terms and conditions remain the same. However, the listing agent also marked through line 185 in the contract, crossing out 10 days and indicating the inspection period would be 5 days. So the issue is, in the seller's counteroffer, should the listing agent have written all other terms and conditions remain the same if the seller countered additional terms within the contract?
No.
Okay. Yell out your name and then the answer.
Jay, no.
Okay. Well, nobody's really wanting to join in. This one's a good one if I confused everybody.
Veronica, no.
All right, probably not is the answer. Before the binding contract is formed, parties must mutually consent to all material terms. Oftentimes, disputes arise because ambiguity has occurred. The counteroffer language is ambiguous within the four corners of the document because it cannot be reasonably interpreted. To avoid that, just make sure you have everything in clear terms. Do not try to be an attorney. Just clear terms to where the layperson can understand it. All right, next question. All terms must be negotiated. Everybody knows all of the fun stuff with this, right? A seller received an offer with the following terms. In section 2J, seller concessions. Seller agrees to pay up to 1.5 of the purchase price. Section 8A, additional terms and condition, HOA transfer and capital improvement fees to be included in the seller concessions. Then on the HOA addendum on page 3, the buyer marked the seller shall pay for the transfer and capital improvement fees. Seller in turn counteroffer with stated seller will not agree to the 1.5 in the seller concessions. The seller did not address the remaining terms of the offer, including the HOA transfer and capital improvement fees. The buyer accepted the counteroffer. At close of escrow, the seller is now refusing to pay HOA transfer capital fees. So the issue is the seller obligated to pay the transfer and capital improvement fees?
Yes.
Yes.
Greg, go back to the previous screen.
You bet.
Okay.
Sandy gets to play as well if you want. Is the seller obligated? We have a couple of yeses. Anybody saying no?
Probably not.
I like that, Yvonne. At least you're starting to know my sense there, where sometimes I have probably not. So that's a good guess. So the answer is actually yes, he does. The seller countered the seller's concessions to be removed from the contract. However, the seller failed to counter the HOA addendum in terms. So since it wasn't addressed, he does have to pay.
It's very similar to the listing says the refrigerator, washer, dryer, convey with the sale or in the sale, but it's never addressed in the purchase contract. So very rarely do a lot of these things actually ever get to a law, a court. But in the eyes of the law, what it will say was, he who writes the contract that's ambiguous is at fault. He who writes the ambiguity. But again, like I said earlier, it's incumbent upon us to understand what's being written, and if we're writing something, what we're conveying is what was agreed upon. So sometimes when Greg or I get phone calls, it's not that you guys don't know it. You're just asking a third party to look at something to make sure it makes sense, because what you're saying may not be the way it's written. So that's where the ambiguity comes in.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Sandy. All right, talking about counteroffers. An agent represents a seller under the purchase contract. The seller received an offer from the buyer, and the seller provided a counteroffer. Pursuant to the terms of the counteroffer had to be accepted by the buyer no later than 12 p.m. the following day. The buyer accepted the counteroffer by 11 a.m., signed in the response section rather than acceptance. This section of the counteroffer. The seller notified the buyer's agent by the mistake at 2 p.m., who promptly sent a proper executed contract and opened escrow. In the interim, the seller obtained a higher offer and now wishes to cancel. The question is the seller bound to the original offer?
No.
No. Frankie, no.
Okay. So a couple no's, any yeses? I see one person nodding his head. All right, so the seller clearly manifested an intent to be bound to the counteroffer by virtue of presentation or presentment of the offer to the buyer. The buyer manifested an intent to be bound. So what we're really talking about is the intent. So the intent to be bound by the signing of the counteroffer and opening escrow. It is unlikely that the buyer's signature of the contract on the wrong line would be found to be material, particularly in the light of the buyer's timely correction of the mistake. The seller is contractually obligated to sell to that particular buyer. And the only one person I saw shaking his head was Sandy Karpen.
So guys, so let me talk about this a minute if I can, Greg, because
You bet.
when I first became broker, I was really anal about time for acceptance, line 437 and line 469, right? Time for acceptance, and you saw, you know, this needs to be accepted by, you know, May 1st, and the deal was done by May 2nd, and you know, and I got a little crazy over that. In recent years, I've not making such a big issue. If it's a day and you're already into the inspection period, you know, there's like this whole example is the intent was there, the spirit was there, and the understanding that there was a meeting of the minds. However, there comes a point where you have to draw a line. If you have a time for acceptance on May 1st and the deal wasn't accepted to May 5th, that's a big deal to me. And if it was accepted on May 4th, that's probably a big deal to me. What I haven't figured out yet is where is that fine line, right? Because the fine line is the day of line 437. It says you have to answer by May 1st. Anything after May 1st is still late. So a lot of it has to do with the spirit of the agreement, and if people have moved forth, they started doing inspection, they started to do an appraisal. So a lot of it has to do with the spirit. And the good news is I've never seen a deal go south because of that. You know, after a deal was agreed to, and then where an argument came between buyer and seller about the time for acceptance. However, you know, best practices and risk reduction, we're just trying to close all possible doors, all possible loopholes. Because I think sometimes it's embarrassing for us as a listing agent to go back to the seller and say, you know, the buyer's canceling the deal, even though it's after the inspection period, because time for acceptance was not valid. So therefore we never had a true purchase contract. And not only that, we can't even keep his money. And if that door is ever open, there's an argument to be made, and we'd have egg on face as a listing agent that we didn't protect our seller's interest. So that's where I get a little overboard sometimes with the time for acceptance.
Time frame does help us in some cases. Like I had one where a Binzer came in a whole day late, and the requests were outrageous. They wanted, you know, the whole roof repaired and all of these things done. And it helped me because I could say, well, you know what, you didn't even turn in the Binzer on time. So actually none of this, you know, and then we were able to work out something where we, you know, we were good to them and took care of them, but we didn't, you know, we didn't have to be bound by any of that.
Correct. And see, here's the thing, our whole purchase contract is based on timelines. I mean, there must be at least 10 different timelines in there. There's even a line that says time is of the essence, right? We even talk about a day, you know, 11:59 p.m. ends a day. I mean, so we get really particular, but there's also the spirit of a contract that was agreed upon. And I don't know where the line lies, you know, where the actual contract, as Greg says, the four corners, and the spirit of what the agreement was. Right? I mean, listen, here's an example. I had this one not too long ago. The house was listed at 4, whatever it was. They made a counteroffer of 3. The final sales price was 345. But when the counter came back, somebody mixed up the numbers and wrote 435 rather than 345. Right? From 345, they wrote 435. Nobody picked up on it because the numbers were just there. And the deal was done. Escrow was opened. And then they realized they made a mistake. So the idea is the contract 435, the way the contract says, and everybody agreed and signed off on? Or was it 3 45 of what the real agreement was. right? So where's the spirit versus the actual written? And the answer was at 4:35, there never truly was a meeting of the minds. Might be on paper, but never truly was a meeting of the minds because everybody understood it to be 3:45. So again, what's written and what the spirit is, there's a very fine line. I'm sure Brian can lecture us for the next 3 days about law and what's written and what the spirit of the contract is and where the gray, where it's black, what's white, and where the gray area is.
Well, I'm sure you've taken notice of the fact that I am unusually silent during this entire discussion. I will remain so.
I think that's because I had you muted, wasn't
No, I don't think so.
it?
All right, continue on.
All right, we have a purchase offer. The buyer's agent sent an email to the listing agent stating that his client may make an offer to purchase the property at a specified price. The listing agent did not counter or give any other indication as whether the price would be acceptable, but rather stated, please send me a written offer when you have it. The buyer's agent is now insisting that the listing agent has an obligation to respond, either rejecting or countering the email. So the question is, does the listing agent have an obligation to further respond?
Huh? Respond to what?
To that email?
The email that says I may make you an offer?
Lisa, the answer is no.
Thank you, Lisa. So this is an
agree.
easy one. I had to throw some softballs in there for you every once in a while. So answer is no. There was no actual offer. So without an offer, doesn't have to respond. I actually had an agent call me on this earlier in the week. So when I saw this, I thought I would throw it in there. But it truly is, it's just an email. We may or may not, until you actually have it in writing in your hand, it is just fluff. So make sure that if you're on the listing side and someone is saying, I will send you that, and somebody else calls, asks you if you have any offers, no, you do not, because you really don't. So make sure that you have it in writing. All right, here's our contract. A non-realtor buyer has a program that allows him to manipulate the Arizona residential resale purchase contract. The buyer changes the sections of the contract and then presents the offer to the seller's agent. Can the buyer change the language of the contract? So remember, this is a non-realtor.
No.
They can't even use the contract.
Well, that's why he has to change it, because he can't use it. Yeah, he can change it. I mean, you can write a contract for transfer of an interest in real estate on a cocktail napkin. Doesn't have to be on anything fancy or formal.
But if he has the purchase contract that we
cannot-
use right now,
he
so that's
cannot-
what we're talking.
He cannot use it because it's a copyrighted form. And so he cannot use that form,
All right.
period.
So the question is no. So everybody's correct on that. The Arizona contract is copyrighted, just like Don said. We as real estate agents, we pay our dues and we have the right to use that. If we stop using and stop paying our dues and become just licensee, and you don't have that, if you don't have or belong to an association, you cannot use the real estate contract, the AAR form.
Is there a
Greg, someone-
penalty for agents who share the contract with consumers for them to use it on their own?
There could be. So I know about, what was it, 2 years ago, Sandy, that Scott Drucker had to actually go up to Prescott because there was a company that was actually using it. And it had the brokerage's name on the bottom of it, but they were still continuing to use it even though they didn't belong to an association. They were given a cease and desist, and then they continued to use it. And so then they basically took their license away from them. And they were not allowed to
So the
practice.
answer, Julie, is a lot of us sometimes if we're doing a lot of preliminary work with a buyer or a seller, we want to
Yep.
give them, what a purchase contract would look like or some of the paperwork. You can do that and you want to write on big fat letters on every page, sample not intended for use, something like that.
Right.
So it's just a sample copy, but actually giving somebody else a copy that's not a member of NAR or AAR, I should say, that's illegal.
Right. So you have to have sample written on there. I mean, how many of us are, before COVID hit, when we had our clients in the car, we would hand them the contract so they could read the contract during the whole process. So when it got time to really write it, they knew exactly what it was. Still have to have sample on there. I have one that has the watermark on it that says sample, so they can't use that.
Right.
So, all right. Authorized party. May the authorized person signing for the LLP sign a contract as ABC LLP or LLC or whatever the entity may be.
No.
I don't understand the question.
So if I belong to ABC LLC and I'm buying a property, can I sign it ABC, LLC?
You sign their name.
No. You have to use your, it has to be a bona fide signature.
It has to be a real person, as everybody would say, right? So absolutely not. So in instances with the LLC, a corporation or any other entity, the signature line should be a authorized signature. So I have one right here. It's basically like if it's John Doe, he would have to sign out John Doe, partner of ABC, LLC, LLP, whatever the case is. So has to put that on there. This actually has come up a number of times in the last 2 months, the phone calls that I've been receiving. How do they do that? And then in our Sky Slope, people are asking, well, how do I put it in there? Because it's an entity. So my response to that is when you're filling out the Sky Slope forms, the first person that you put in there is the signer. So if it's John Doe, it's John Doe. And then in the second buyer, does not have to sign, I put ABC LLC. That's what it is. So you have the person who actually signs, and on the second one, it is actually the company or the LLC that's buying it. There we go, Sandy.
This is our guest speaker for today. There's a commercial break. Hi.
Hi, Sharon.
All my friends.
Hi.
All my friends. Can you say hi, friends? Hi.
The better looking one is the one on the left.
Not the one in the middle for sure.
Beautiful eyes.
Thank you.
Hi, these are all my friends.
What do you think? You ready for answers?
Okay.
See you soon. All right, that was a commercial break. Sorry. Thank you.
By the way, that's the real reason that Sharon decided to retire.
That's it.
So she could go visit the grandbabies more. All right, here's one that we get quite often. Switching between identified lenders. So when the buyer submitted the pre-qualification form for the purchase contract, lender A was identified. Thereafter, the loan status update was submitted to seller with a lender B as identified. Although the buyer was moving forward with lender B, buyer switched back to lender A because buyer decided that he liked lender A's loan program better. The question is, can the buyer switch back to lender A without either notifying the seller or obtaining the seller's written consent?
No.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia.
I would say yes, but it'd be better to notify everybody as well.
All right.
Yes.
Answer.
Yes,
Go ahead, Jay.
as long as it does not affect the ability to obtain the funding.
And what else?
And
what else? 3 things. That's one of
They
them.
qualify.
PQF originally said
qualify is
lender
number
A.
1, right? 2 more things.
Cost the seller any more money.
Didn't cost the seller any more money. What's the last one? It doesn't
Close of
delay the
escrow.
close of escrow.
Stays
It
the
doesn't
same.
delay the close of escrow without mutual consent. But I agree with Jay. Just do it anyway. Because here's the problem, guys. And this happens a lot. Lender says this is a done deal. They switch lenders. It's a done deal. Closing is not a problem. Not going to cost the seller any more money, blah, blah, blah. So therefore, by the contract, there's no need to tell the seller. And all of a sudden, something happens. Something happens. They can't close on time. And now the buyer first, or now the seller first finds out you changed lenders. Because you can't close on time, the listing agent calls the lender, say, hey, just want to know why we're not closing on time. Well, I'm not doing this loan. I wasn't doing this loan for the last 30 days. It doesn't become an issue until it becomes an issue. And if it becomes an issue later in the deal, that means it was an issue on the front of the deal. And by simply disclosing and saying, hey, Jay, just FYI, we went back to lender A, better program, then you've already disclosed it. But it's never a problem until it becomes a problem. And if it becomes a problem, that means it was a problem in the very beginning, which means we should have disclosed that. Because you'll never know if it's going to delay the close of escrow until you get to the close of escrow.
Right.
So Jay's right. Listen, nobody ever got in trouble for disclosing. We've never lost an arbitration because something was disclosed. We never lost a mediation or a lawsuit because something was disclosed. We get a lot of flack sometimes because we over disclose, but nobody ever gets in trouble for disclosing. It's just the safest way to go.
Disclose, disclose, disclose. Okay, appraisal contingency. We have a lot of this, so that's that people are kind of writing this out, so I threw this in there. Buyer and seller executed the AAR purchase contract, which was contingent upon financing. Sounds like a normal offer, correct? The contract further provided the appraisal was to be completed by a specific date. The appraisal was not completed by the deadline, and the seller gave a cure notice to the buyer as a result. The buyer has now agreed to waive the appraisal contingency in the contract. Does waiving the appraisal contingency cure the non-compliance alleged by the seller? This is a tricky one, isn't it? No answers, boy.
Well, the specific
yes.
date wasn't performed,
Correct.
and they did serve a cure notice. And the buyer took action within that cure notice to apparently remove that specific date by waiving it.
Correct.
So I'd say yes.
Yes, as well.
All right. Answer is most likely, so probably.
Most likely. You sound like an attorney, Greg.
Well, I'm working with a lot of attorneys, so Sandy Karpen being a one that really drives attorneys crazy, right, Brian?
Well, on occasion.
So the party in whose favor the contingency operates is free to waive the contingency and proceed with contract. The buyer therefore waived the appraisal contingency and proceeded with the closing. With the waiver in place, there is no need for a copy of the appraisal to be provided. Accordingly, waiving the contingency would likely cure the non-compliance alleged by the seller. So once that they have written that out, most likely it would do that. You would probably want to make sure you close the loophole if you really want to and let it go. But I have some cure notice questions in here as well, so we'll get to those here in a few minutes. Here's one that I received about a month ago. So buyer and seller executed the contract. Buyer conducted a walkthrough before close of escrow, but all of the seller's personal property was still on the premises. The buyer therefore requested another walkthrough so he can confirm the condition of the property that certain repairs were made. Seller has refused to allow the final additional walkthrough. Is the buyer allowed to do another walkthrough?
Yes.
Okay, Jay said yes.
Yes.
Got two.
Yes.
Got
Sarah,
Redfern over
yes.
there. All right, perfect. So the answer is yes. They, in section 6L, provided that the buyer has the right to conduct walkthrough and to convince him that agreed upon repairs were completed and the property is in the same condition as the date of the contract. The language of the contract contemplates multiple walkthroughs if necessary. So if you're going through and the accordion doors that go in front of some washer and dryers in some properties, when you wrote the contract, they were up there. During walkthrough, they were taken off so they could get the washer and dryer out. They get to go through another walkthrough because they're not there. It's not in the same condition. So yes, they have to go back through and verify that those doors were put back on.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, guys, before you go to the next question, I'm gonna bow out. So I'm just gonna leave you with this. Thank you, Greg. Our next office meeting, company meeting is Tuesday, the 21st. It's at 9 o'clock. We'll have coffee at 8:30. It'll be in person. It'll be Zoom style, Facebook style. Also, Scott Drucker, who's probably the author of most of these types of questions, is our guest speaker. He speaks to us once a year. He's the general counsel for AAR. Brian, you can ask him all the legal questions you want and you'll get a legal answer. There's a lot of things happening with some new change of forms, some new statutes. He'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about the tenant eviction moratorium that's over. That really hasn't affected us too much, even for those of us that do property management. So he'll just tell you the latest and the greatest. He'll talk about the lawsuit going on with NAR and the Department of Justice. So just a lot of good stuff, a lot of things happening. We haven't heard from him from a company for about 6 months now. I go to his monthly meetings, but there's a lot of things happening since we met as a group. So plan on Tuesday, the 21st, our next office company business meeting. And I'm going to bow it. I'm not going to get offline because I think I'll end the
And
meeting.
it's right next door at the Greyhawk Golf Club in the Fairway House. So it's really close to the office. Don can probably hit his 8-iron over there and land it in the next to the green.
Yeah.
What's that
And,
for?
and next Wednesday, of course, at 9 o'clock, we'll continue on. If there's anything that you would like to talk about specifically, or topics or issues, just give me a heads up in advance. And you guys know we're always happy to talk about it.
No, our next meeting is at the Great Hall.
So Don, you had some question?
Yeah, a couple quick things. One, the luxury home tour is tomorrow morning at Greyhawk. Okay, they serve a nice breakfast. They always have a great speaker, and it really, okay, I'm gonna say, it really, that we don't have any representation from Remax Fine Properties, a luxury brand in North Scottsdale. It doesn't come to this. And back to what Sandy said earlier, you know, be around people that you want to be like. Be around people that are showing product that you want to show. Be around and network with other agents. You know, there's a lot of agents that have been going to it for a long time. Julie goes, a lot of the vendors go.
Don, I hate to interrupt you,
You're not
but it's
going?
not tomorrow, it's Friday.
Oh, well, I'm always early. But it is Friday. There's 3
And it's
homes on the
fabulous.
floor. It's a good way to keep up with what's going on and also get everybody else's opinions as to what's going on, not just in our, you know, you can't live your life in a silo, you guys.
So Don,
You know, also
with that-
there's a luxury event coming that Remax is sponsoring here, coming in October. I don't know if anybody's signed up for that yet, but Ann Miller will be there. A couple days before, the Inman Luxury is in Las Vegas. And 600 or 800 of the top luxury agents throughout the country will be there. And they've got some interesting people speaking.
Hey, Don,
Ryan Sturhan will be there. So there's a lot of things going on, you know?
if they wanted to go to the luxury tour, what's the best way to do that?
I would suggest they drive over there, you know, Sandy could run over there easily.
Do they have to reserve a seat? That's my question.
No.
Yes,
you
they
just
need
come
to
over,
register in advance.
You can. Julie,
I think
go
it's
ahead.
required still.
What's that?
I think it's still required to register in advance. The fee is $14 and you get a beautiful breakfast, a speaker, tour of houses, and lunch at the last house. So it's the best $14 you can spend.
Yeah.
Guys, how about those who are not comfortable going to a group meeting? Are they accommodating anything online or Zoom style?
No.
Okay.
Well, what I was gonna say is that maybe Sandy and you can get with the Brain Trust and see about, you know, Sandy, it was really great doing that
Code of ethics.
code of ethics. I think that's really great for our image. maybe what we could do is, I don't know if they're filming it and sending it out afterwards. I don't think they do that.
No,
But
they
now
don't.
with Andrew, it'd be a great idea that Remax is there filming it and sending it out. You know, I mean, it just really bothers me that it's the Russ Lyons show. I might as well just go up the road and be at the Russ Lyons sales meeting.
All right. So on this
Let's
right
move
here,
on. Let's go.
so
on.
we're moving on. If you want, Julie, can they reach out to you directly for that, or do they need to reach
Absolutely.
out to Jill?
Absolutely. Go ahead and reach out to me and I'll make sure to get you signed up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So we've got about 4 minutes left. I was going to ask, I have about 40 more to go, but we're going to just go ahead and cut it off right there. And if you have any other questions, you know, Sandy's available by phone, text, and email. I'm available here in the office, so I'll be here all week. And just give me a call or shoot me a text and I'll get back to you. That's the best way to get a hold of me is phone and text. Email sometimes gets lost, so just call me. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Greg,
you.
if you want to leave it on for
Thank
just
you.
a second, I'm
You
going to
bet.
put the link